Coventry, champions. Flexing on Wrexham, showing brains and brawn. Victor's torpedo, EMC's genius. Bloody Hull, man. Charlie Kellman. Charlton, athletic and safe. Oxford, untied. Relegated. West Brom deducted 2 points, but conducting themselves brilliantly on the pitch. Derby's win takes the battle for 6th to final day, and Pompey got Segsy on the beach. It's all set up nicely for Ipswich v Saints on Tuesday evening. Welcome to Not the Top 20 podcast, recapping the Championship weekend, penultimate weekend of the season. Lots to talk about. We are sponsored by Sky Bet and the Sky Bet EFL Building Foundations Fund.
So we had a false start with this podcast, which means that's the second time I've heard the intro, and I missed Segsy on the beach the first time, and that is fantastic. So congratulations.
Thank you, George. I'm Ali, and we've got lots to talk about. We're going to start at the bottom, where the relegation battle ended with a game to spare. And it's been a particularly brutal relegation battle. I'm sure you could say that about most divisions, but this one's had its own flavour, I'd say, in the Championship, in that we had some points deductions playing a part from the start of the season to the middle of the season to even the very, very end of the season in West Brom's case. A couple of teams down there who did not expect to be down there, and those that did, generally scrapping hard. And in the last few weeks, the pace being set by the bottom 8 has been very, very impressive. Portsmouth stepped up. Blackburn stepped up. West Brom massively stepped up. Leicester stumbled, relegated last midweek. For Oxford United, they've been in pretty good form as well for the last few weeks, but not good enough. They needed Charlton to lose to a Hull side with plenty to play for on Saturday lunchtime before they played Sheffield Wednesday. And if they won that would take things to final day. It didn't transpire like that, George. Your beloved Oxford United relegated for the first time in the pod era. Talk me through how you experienced that day and the key events at the Valley and at Oxford.
Having, I think, one promotion exactly when we started as well. So
first season.
Yeah, well, first
full season you won promotion.
15-16.
Was it? First ever pod we did was May 2016.
Maybe that's why we started.
And we went, Oxford are good, aren't they?
I love football. Let's start a podcast.
Michael Appleton, John Lundstrom and Kamar Roof and others.
The boys. Yeah, it was a pretty surreal day. You and I were meant to go to a stag do for Dave Walker of England Pod and Football Clichés fame. And I decided to miss the trip to Sandown in order to go with my dad to watch Oxford Sheffield Wednesday. We watched Hull Charlton on an iPad in the car before kind of walking into quite an eerie stadium. It was a weird atmosphere. It was, to be relegated before a ball is kicked. But, to wake up in the morning of a game still in it and then be relegated before the game starts is a novel situation to find yourself in. And that credit to the fans who kind of stayed with the team quite well. The game kind of resembled a match between two teams who didn't have much on the line. And again, I guess credit to the Oxford players in what must have been pretty difficult circumstances, like still in the in the relegation battle when they found out they were playing, and then relegated by the time they started playing. So,
and that was because of the Charlton result. I want to talk to you about how you feel, but let's make sure we note Charlton's win against Hull.
Yes, no, for sure. And I watched that. So, to talk about Charlton's game firstly, I guess, I kind of, as an Oxford fan, thought that Charlton were going to have their work cut out in order to get anything from this game. It felt like a real possibility that Hull would win the game. Hull were favourites to win the game, and huge credit for Charlton for the way that they played. They were by far the better team in the first half. It must have been an incredible day to be a Charlton fan, to go to the game, to see Charlie Kellman pick up the ball on the left-hand side, cut inside and smash on into the top right-hand corner, to see their team basically just being the better side against the side in Hull who are trying to get into the playoff places after a few weeks of not playing particularly well. As is often going to be the way with the way that game state goes, Hull grew into the game having been behind without threatening too much. There was loads of added on time in the first half as well, which meant that I turned off the stream before Hull got an equaliser through John Egan really late on in the first half, which, from then again, as an Oxford fan, you're positive. As a Charlton fan, you're thinking, have we blown this position? And there were a few eyebrows raised when Jayden Fevrier started the game lining up as a left wing back for Charlton, moving away from his kind of right wing position, but he moved back there in the second half. And again, even though Hull had a few chances in the second half of 1-1, there was one effort from Joe Gelhardt, which he kind of shanked wide. February picked up the ball on the right-hand side, where he'd now adopted that right wing position, cutting on a stronger left foot and smashed one into the bottom left-hand corner. it's funny that for Hull, it was a case of, the finishing exploits of Gelhardt and the like, who've gotten to where they've been, deserted them in a big moment, and suddenly teams who haven't been taking a chance against them all season scored 2 magnificent goals.
Yeah, not a great time for Hull to go winless in 6 games, 4 draws and 2 defeats in that time, and currently out of the playoffs, albeit only on goal difference. Massive for Charlton, whose season, the one thing it has really been lacking has been excitement at the top of the pitch, and I would suggest moments of individual brilliance have been few and far between. Their list of top goal scorers has Sonny Carey with 8, and he's probably the one that has shown more than anyone individual brilliance. Kelman now with 7, and then the rest on 3 and fewer. So a massive, Charlton stepping up when they needed to. Nathan Jones had a big Nathan Jones moment as well, as he quite often seems to in these big occasions, essentially running onto the pitch to start celebrating as one of the Charlton players rounded the keeper right at the end, only for the ball to be brilliantly cleared off the line by Carl Joseph, with Jones essentially standing in like the sort of left wing position. So yeah, massive relief for Charlton and relegated the Yellows.
And that is the big, even though I'm an Oxford fan, so there's always going to be that element to it. The big positive story of the day was, of course, Charlton. So, having come up in scintillating style in the back end of last season, I think there started to be some questions asked about Jones and his ability to get them over the line. But they did it. They did it in style. They did it in front of their fans. They did it in a must-win game for their opposition, or at least a big game for their opposition as well. So, I think going to a game like that, probably not feeling particularly positive, seeing 2 players score the quality of goal that they scored, to be pegged back and to go ahead again. Huge day for Charlton, and they'll be a championship team again next season.
What does it feel like to be relegated? A direct question, but genuinely, what are the emotions? Because it's been, obviously Oxford have been relegated previously in your lifetime, but probably not really since you've been an adult, I guess.
Yeah, not since we got relegated out of the Football League by Leyton Orient, and what was that, 2005? I was probably sadder than I kind of thought I would be on the day, because we've been, we were 1 to 10 to get relegated before playing West Brom in early March, so it's not like this hasn't been coming.
Yeah.
But then, because the run of form got very good, and because we were playing well, and because teams around us weren't playing particularly well, there was definitely the hope came. Now, as the dust settles a little bit, I'm probably a bit more philosophical about it. There are elements, as I wrote on NTT20.com a couple of months ago, I have found some elements of being a fan of a team who are punching above their weight quite exhausting. It feels like it polarizes a fan base, because some look at it from a kind of a logical point of view and see, if our stadium is this big and the stadium is owned by someone else and our revenue is this and our budget is this, then we're probably going to struggle. And some, which is a completely valid way to look at things, think, hold on, I'm an Oxford fan. Doesn't matter what league we're in, I expect us to continue to perform. And that means that things get fractured quite quickly within a fan base. It can be, I think the match-going fans have always been amazing, but in an age of social media where you spend quite a lot of time scrolling Twitter and other things, you see it more, and it's just kind of like, there's an element of me that quite looks forward to returning to a league where we can all kind of be on the same page as to what's acceptable. And that is challenging for promotion at the moment. You would expect with our budget anyway. So, but also not complacent enough. I understand that you look at how Luton started the season, you look how Plymouth Argyle started the season, there's no divine right that Oxford will go into League One and perform. The summer will have to be good. A lot of good players are going to leave. A lot of players we probably won't leave because they're still under contract. So, but obviously gutted. Have loved our 2 seasons in the Championship, which not every fan does, because some people don't like watching their team have 35% possession and not create very much. But, in my mind, it's kind of, this is where we want to be and where you want to belong. And in order to belong there, you have to consolidate there. And that means being a small fish for a while. You look at Coventry, who came up out of League One and had a couple of seasons where they were towards the bottom end of the Championship, and they built kind of season on season to develop. And were able to do that once they had, a new owner, of course, but also their stadium situation changed too. So, really gutted, but positive about the future, and pretty convinced that as a football club, we're in a good position to continue to, or to go back to being a good League One side. Yeah, because one of my strongest feelings is that you haven't been a really bad Championship team.
No,
I know.
Do you know what I mean? And you can judge that on eye test, you can judge that on numbers. I suppose if I was looking at the numbers, 6 teams have generated a lower non-penalty XG than Oxford this season, so not been the worst attacking team in terms of the underlying numbers. In terms of actually finishing the chances, that's been a separate issue. 10 teams had a worse non-penalty XG against. 10 teams gave up more chances or have given up more chances than Oxford over the course of the season. And I would suggest that generally a team with those two factors going into their underlying numbers probably wouldn't be the second bottom or the third bottom team. You've lost 20 games, which 14 by a single goal. I'm not sure what proportion would be normal, but I maintain that I can't remember many games this season where you've just been rubbish, where you've just been battered, where bigger championship clubs with bigger budgets and better, deeper squads have just thumped Oxford United. So I suppose that makes me quite positive, along with the fact that I don't get the feeling you're going down with a huge amount of proper angry feeling, which sometimes haunts relegated clubs and sometimes creates what is generally called the hangover for next season. Matt Bloomfield, can we assume that he'll be the manager next season?
I think so. I hope so. I mean,
it certainly feels like there's no...
The owner, Eric Tohir, is over in the UK, which is quite rare, and suggests there may be some decisions that are made, but we'll see.
And even in terms of the players, in the main, your starters over the last few weeks who've played pretty well, who've done quite a good job, I don't get the sense that there's this idea that they're all absolutely useless and they need selling. So it's an interesting concoction, I would suggest, heading down to League One.
But also, I think that a key thing is, lessons get learnt around the Championship, and I reckon if Oxford were to return in a year's time, there would be less of a willingness to recruit proven Championship quality, whatever that is. Matt Phillips, Siriki Dembele, basically people who are unwanted by most other Championship clubs, but have a lot of Championship minutes, so therefore available to a team like Oxford.
Yeah.
And I also think there's probably, even though Gary Rowett's arrival came in and saved Oxford initially, probably less of a desire to go down that route as well. I think you can try so hard to change processes in order to adapt to a new level when actually the process that you had in place to get you there in the first place was okay. So
you got 9 more points at home last season than you did this season. Just looking at little things that have clearly seem a clear difference to last season's survival by comparison, 9 more points at home last season. This season, fewer clean sheets and more instances where you failed to score. In fact, you failed to score in 40% of your games. So I think that was sometimes seemed tactical, but the underlying numbers suggest you weren't a horrific chance creation team. You have been unfortunate with some wastefulness, basically. The individual players in the main have not been finishing their chances at a level that you might that you needed, essentially, and not a great breadth of open play goal threats, I think it's fair to say. In terms of non-penalty goals, I mean, Lancashire has 11, of which 2 came on the weekend, 2 brilliant goals. That's a quarter of the team's total scored by Lancashire. Brannigan has 4 non-penalty goals, that's the next best, and 2 of those are free kicks. So from open play, no one scoring more than I think 3 or 2 other than Lancashire is obviously a problem. So look, we say goodbye to Yellows in terms of the Championship segment. Gave it a good go, but it's interesting to look at the league table, even if you take out deductions, or rather, if you do take out the points deductions. Oxford are 5 points behind Blackburn, who would be 4th bottom in that time. So look, we have Oxford down, we have Charlton staying up. That has to have been their first and only objective this season. It can only really be when you come up and you're not supercharging things in the same way as Wrexham and Birmingham City did. Can they kick on now is kind of the big question. I think with Nathan Jones in charge, I am confident of that. He has a very, very good track record of not just achieving a promotion, but then consolidating, building, taking teams even further up. I don't suspect that will be something that happens overnight, and probably not over the course of a summer. They've got things to sort out for sure at the top of the pitch. As I mentioned, they've not been great. Only Sheffield Wednesday with a lower non-penalty XG number this season, so could certainly do work at the top of the pitch. But as Oxford found out, as many have, recruitment and the move from League One to the Championship and the territories that opens up for you, you're not just stuck with domestic recruitment, and that's not a bad thing because domestic recruitment can be quite expensive. Charlton went pretty domestic heavy last summer, and I think it's fair to say a lot of the guys that they brought up from League One haven't gone that well. I think that would be a fair overview. So they, like Portsmouth, like Oxford, tried to have this big challenge of building the next team. You have your promotion team, and they generally are good enough to keep you up the next season. And then you have to build again, and that's where it becomes a big challenge, I think. And that's the challenge in front of them. Where else do we go? West Brom had a points deduction, a 2-point deduction confirmed. Now, it was a 2-day hearing. The independent club financial review panel that kind of deals with stuff when it gets brought to their door by the EFL, when there's a sanction to be made or an investigation to be done like this. They found that their losses did exceed the upper loss threshold and recommended a 2-point penalty. The club disagreed with the findings and remains of the view that it's fully complied with the profit and sustainability rules. They haven't been informed of the quantum of the breach, save that this is less than 2 million. The club say this is the smallest ever breach of the P&S rules across the EFL Championship and the Premier League. And some of the reporting as well suggesting that this was linked to essentially the club's community foundation and costs and spend that went towards that, which they didn't think counted towards profit and sustainability rules, but the EFL did. It's been a bit of a mess. The upshot is the points have been taken off. Even with deduction, they are safe for next season, and I'm sure there'll be some bad blood and some bad feeling, and West Brom will have a bit of a chip on their shoulder. I have no doubt about that over the next period. But the most important thing is they've been absolutely excellent on the pitch. James Morrison has saved them from a point where they looked absolutely desperate, and even on the weekend, a 0-0 draw at home to Ipswich, playing very, very well. Walton had to make 6 saves for Ipswich in goal. Kipre had a goal disallowed for Ipswich, albeit correctly. I sort of put it to you that this was probably quite a good point for both teams in the end. Puts Ipswich in a really strong position with obviously 2 games to go. A win would have been better, but I think avoiding defeat was not the worst thing in the world.
I think on the balance of play it is. I mean, I think Ipswich, it was surprising to see how kind of looked like they were happy to take a point throughout the second half. And, it obviously puts them in a strong position going into Tuesday night's game, but it doesn't secure it. Had they won that game, they'd have had a real 1 foot in the Premier League situation. Yeah. So a bit surprising, but yeah, I totally agree. I haven't spoken so much in the past about the pitfalls of buying into caretaker reigns and how, often it's just variance. I kind of having to remind myself that at the moment, because it, like what Morrison has done at West Brom is so impressive. Like, they are playing incredibly well. Mm-hmm. And if there was an occasion where maybe to risk it and to give someone the job full time, especially because he's someone that has an incredible relationship with the fans and presumably with the players too, judging by the way that they're playing, this could be it. You've been stung by these in the past before, and obviously the results aren't can often reverse themselves. And in West Brom's case, certainly the prices they've been going off on Saturdays generally have suggested that they've never been anywhere near as bad as they looked towards the end of Eric Ramsey's reign. But they are playing really well in that one. It kind of feels like for the first time in a long time, you can be pretty confident that West Brom go into games and are going to be dominant. And especially in the first half against Ipswich, they were dominant on Saturday. So yeah, amazing what they've done, and taking my Oxford hat off. Like, I'm delighted that a team, the way that it looks, it feels like there are going to be 3 teams with points deductions at the bottom end of the Championship, but none of them are going to be relegated because of their points deductions, and that's good. Yeah,
5 clean sheets in a row for West Brom. It's pretty amazing, playing with such energy and quality as well. So Ipswich Southampton on Tuesday. Ipswich can as good as secure promotion if they win. They'd be 3 points clear of Millwall with a vastly superior goal difference. They've got QPR at home next Saturday. A draw would keep Millwall interested on final day for sure, and Borough could still get there with a win and an Ipswich defeat at home to QPR. The nuclear option, of course, is if Southampton win, that would mean that we have teams from 2nd to 5th on 80, 80, 79 and 79 heading into final day. Ipswich would still be at the top of that pile, and they have that home game against QPR. But it would lead to a wonderfully nervy and exciting final day for the neutral, with Millwall hosting already relegated Oxford, Southampton away at Preston, and Borough, the toughest fixture on paper, away at Wrexham, who still have playoff ambitions, or rather a playoff position to protect. Saints had an amazing effort at Wembley in the FA Cup semi-final. I can't quite believe how well both Coventry did in their FA Cup semi-final against Man U, and then Saints against Man City, going ahead with the best of all the great Finn Azaz goals.
So
where
good.
He's done this, or a variant of this exact goal, more times than I can count over the last 3 or 4 seasons. But to do it on the biggest stage, it was hard not to just feel very, very warm inside watching him wheel away and going like, amazing. Yeah, I do this all the time.
So good. It was such a good finish. having been at the Coventry game a couple of years ago, obviously we weren't here on Saturday, but knowing that Saints had that, well, I mean, they had two, they had a goal disallowed as well, but having that moment of like just total and utter delirium, even though 10 minutes later, obviously devastation.
A spammy deflection from Doku.
I know.
And then some world-class Spanish midfielder spanking one in with power from the edge of the box.
Baby Rodri.
Pathetic.
I'm delighted for their fans that they got that. We spoke a bit about how no matter which way that Saturday went, it was always, it was hard to see how it could have a positive impact on Tuesday. And I do worry a little bit that, being so close and having that heartbreak could have an impact, as it did with Coventry a few years ago. But at the same time, off the back of a disappointing draw in their last league game, they've gone toe-to-toe against a team who could win a domestic treble, and we're 10 minutes away or 6 minutes away, 7 minutes away from winning it. So Tondereka has built something pretty special there. And there's also a part of me that thinks that this experience could be really big for them in the playoffs if, when they do get there. They've gone to Wembley. They've had a big occasion. They've had two massive cup games in recent weeks against the two best teams in the country. They won one. They came close to winning another one. And having that heartbreak, experiencing that hurt might mean that when they are staring down the barrel and it's who blinks first on a playoff final or something else, they might be able to reach into some area that the other team won't have.
See what they can dredge up on Tuesday night at home to Ipswich. Currently it's Millwall 3rd, Middlesbrough 4th, Southampton 5th, Wrexham 6th, but I think that we'll move around a bit probably between now and 2:30-ish on Saturday. Middlesbrough, well, we've used the analogy before of a team that's just in such a bad run of form in front of goal. And it's a bit like when you've got a ketchup bottle and it's not coming out and you shake it and you shake it and you shake it and you open the lid, or the lid flies off and the ketchup flies out. And I put it to you that Middlesbrough 5, Watford 1, it might have been a ketchup bottle situation.
Or Morgan Whittaker comes over to you and goes, "Do you need a hand with that, mate?" and just takes off the lid and pours it out. It was a funny one because it was by no means Borough's most dominant display, especially kind of when the scoreline was tight, and unsurprisingly when the game got away from Watford was when kind of Borough could really turn the screw. But Watford gave as good as they got in the first half. It was end to end, but Watford had more joy creating chances than many have done against Borough recently. I'm not a huge free kick goalman, but Whittaker's free kick to open the scoring here was absolutely unbelievable. Like, knowing he had scored a free kick before watching the game back and then seeing where he was, I was like, he must have gone close with one just before he scored. And then actually, no, he just scores a free kick from like 38 yards, starting it miles outside the left post and curling it into the top left-hand corner. Just an incredible hit. And they really have missed him and his return to form, because he isn't always this good, but when he is good, he scores goals. And that's exactly what he was able to do here. Strelets got in to make it 2-0 before Abankwah. It was kind of really weird to see Abankwah going through on goal and battling with Strelets in open play. It kind of felt the wrong way around, a defender running through with a striker trying to stop him from scoring. But it was a beautifully struck finish, and he kind of outmuscled the two Borough players well to get in that position. Whittaker then got a second, and he was nearly one of the many hat-trick scorers we had on Saturday, as he had a shot that rattled off the bar from distance. And then delighted for Tommy Conway, who has had some difficult moments at times this season, but he tucked away a penalty well, and then a really nice finish to make it 5-1. So yeah, it feels significant, this for Borough. It feels like they've had so many games where they should have done this and haven't done this, and maybe, as you say, this was a game where maybe it wasn't quite as dominant as the scoreline suggests, but Watford fans won't remember the moments in the first half where they looked okay with Kjærgaard forcing Brynn into a couple of decent saves. They will just see this as yet another terrible performance and terrible result under Ed Still, who it's just feeling increasingly unlikely that he's going to be. There are even reports suggesting that it's already decided that he won't be their manager next season.
Yes. Was that already decided before he'd even been appointed? It's best to make those sort of
How is he
plans.
supposed to keep his head still if he keeps getting moved around?
Leicester 1, Millwall 1 on Friday night. Now, this is pretty significant in the context of the automatic promotion picture. Millwall could be 2 points clear of Ipswich had they won this against an already relegated Leicester side who were booed onto the pitch, whose midfielder Harry Winks was booed pretty much every time he touched the ball. I should say there was some counter arguments from other fans who clapped and cheered as well. So that plus the Millwall fans being about as loud as any set of away fans I think I've ever heard created a very strange atmosphere. But this was a huge missed opportunity for them. I actually think Millwall were pretty poor in the first half, and that is something that you've noted that has happened a bit too often maybe in the last month or 6 weeks where they haven't come flying out the traps, and there could be something strategic about that, that Neil likes to keep the game tight and then really backs his team in terms of fitness and those that they have off the bench. But in this instance, I think it would have been better to try and blitz a Leicester City side that are just so flimsy and already relegated and could have got that stadium completely turned. Cooper probably should have been sent off in the first half for Millwall and wasn't. They just weren't that great. And then in the second half, when they did start having a few more chances, Suter was massive at the back for Leicester, playing his first start for over a year after a terrible injury. He then scored to put Leicester 1-0 up. And the last few minutes were chaos. Langstaff equalised and Millwall had so many sort of near moments. Leicester are pretty much just letting Millwall attack, and they couldn't get the goal to give them what would have been a precious win. So it means things are very, very difficult for Millwall. They are not all over, but obviously they rely on Ipswich dropping points, basically both against Southampton on Tuesday and then again at home to QPR, and for Millwall to win against Oxford. That is the picture. Ipswich on 80 with a plus 30 goal difference. Millwall on 80 with a plus 13 goal difference, having played a game more. Middlesbrough on 79 plus 25 goal difference. And then 3 points back, Southampton plus 24 with Saints and Ipswich playing on Tuesday. In the playoff picture, we've already talked about Charlton beating Hull City. That was not ideal for Hull City, but we also saw Wrexham lose on Sunday, and Derby did the business at QPR on Saturday. George, talking with Wrexham first, because this was the game that saw Coventry secure their title in a festival atmosphere at the Rico, or whatever it's called.
Yeah, for sure. It feels like there were two huge moments in this game that really swung it in Coventry's favour. They both came after both teams had scored. Thomas Asante scoring inside 20 minutes with a close range finish. Then Ollie Rathbone did what he's done quite a lot this season, just picking up the ball on the edge of the area, and a kind of rare concession from Coventry where you're thinking, could Carl Rushworth have maybe done a bit better? A sweet strike from Rathbone, but it kind of squirmed between underneath Rushworth. And then not long after that, the ball fell to George Thomason on his right foot at the edge of the area, and he did so well. Kind of smashed it in the bottom left, towards the bottom left-hand corner, but the ball thumped the base of the post and came out. And you do think if Wrexham had gone 2-1 up in this game, that could have been a huge moment for them. And instead, after a few chances at both ends, Sam Smith having one opportunity which he kind of got wrong when he's put through 1-on-1 and hit it straight at the keeper. Victor Torp, as he has done so many times this season, with a good free kick. But there's just no denying that if you're a Wrexham fan, you're looking at Danny Ward and thinking, surely you should have kept that out. It wasn't in the corner. He gets a really big palm to it. It's struck incredibly sweetly by Torp. There's no denying that. But I still think, once you get that big a hand to it and you get there, you really should be powering it, getting it away from goal rather than pushing it into the roof of the net. Efren Mason-Clark, who was brilliant on the day, really his creative work. I think he's one of the kind of unsung heroes of the Championship season this season. He's someone who provides so much quality off that left-hand side. And again, is another one of these players at Coventry they signed 2 years ago, and he had a decent first season, but they've just retained the faith in him, given him a lot of minutes, given him time to grow. He's finished the season with 3 goals in his last 2 games, with 10 goals in total, and 6 assists. Like, he's been a really big player for them, and it was fitting that it was a nice finish from him to win the game 3-1. And I'm excited to see him in the Premier League next season. So, great, brilliant for Coventry, who are enjoying their time, enjoying their procession, crowned as champions. Wrexham will look at a couple of moments and wonder if they could have got something out of the game, and obviously going into final day against a Borough side who are going to be motivated to try and finish as high as they can, whether that's second or third, because that is, I keep hearing people talking about how if Ipswich do it, then suddenly, for Millwall, Saints, Borough, final day is going to be a nothing. But I finishing third is going to be incredibly important to whoever of those 3 gets there, because then you get to play one of Hull, Wrexham or Derby rather than playing one of Millwall, Saints and Borough. So I think they'll all be really motivated to do it.
Derby still alive, 3-2 win at Loftus Road. How on earth did they win this football match? QPR flew out the traps. Such a strong start. Far the better side. Took the lead and a lovely goal to Benny down the right, cutting back for Harvey Vale to finish. I'm really excited about Harvey Vale's 2026-27 season. I think if he stays fit and he is a lock in this number 10 role, we could see him take a real leap. And, he's only 22 still, but a little bit late to the party, really, as had a bit of a false start to his senior career. Fraulo equalised for Derby from the edge of the box, but then Kone put QPR back ahead. It was more great attacking play and a good finish from Kone. This was an absolute battering for 75 minutes. More wasted chances for QPR at 2-1, and then set piece goal. Langas with a header showing great strength, heading home a Joe Ward delivery, and the winner from a Derby point of view. If they make the playoffs, whatever happens next weekend, this should be one of the most memorable moments of this season for Derby County. Jayden Bonnell, who only really came into the team and playing significant minutes since Ajimang's Achilles injury a few weeks ago, which I thought would be such a blow for them, with pure individual brilliance. He receives the ball out wide, quite near the touchline, with two defenders closing him down, and everyone else basically in the middle, hoping that he'll either manage to get a cross in or he's got the left back behind him who he could lay it back for a deep cross. Instead, Bonnell faces up the two defenders, flip-flaps through the middle of them, and then drives, cuts inside, smashes it into the far corner, wins it for Derby late on. He scored the winner against Oxford. He scored the first goal in their 2-0 win against Stoke, when they needed to win that one. 3 goals in 5 games when they really needed him to keep their hopes alive. So massive afternoon for them. They'll need to play better, you'd think, to get into the playoffs, and then certainly they'd need to play better in them than they did here, but they won, and Wrexham and Hull both lost. So it was a huge weekend for Derby. They are 8th on 69. Hull and Wrexham are 7th and 6th on 70. Derby have the best goal difference of the 3, which could be significant. What's intriguing about Wrexham and Hull being on the same points is that Wrexham +4, Hull +3, and goals scored is the next tiebreaker. Wrexham 67, Hull 68. So things are really tight, and that could come into play depending on what the results are on Saturday. For Derby to get in, obviously they need to win and the other two fail to win, or they could draw if the other two lose. Hull are at home to Norwich, not easy. Wrexham at home to Middlesbrough, not easy. Derby at home to Sheffield United, also not easy, but certainly of all of those that the team, or they're facing the opposition with, on the worst form, shall we say. Elsewhere, a couple of games without too much riding on them, but still, as always, some kind of fun, random stuff happened. Stoke 1, Portsmouth 3, saw Segacic score a hat-trick for Pompey, all with his left peg. The second or third one, particularly lovely. He's so short, Segacic, but hits the ball with such power. Makes me think he's like, his foot's like reinforced with steel. Like they brought out that cricket bat back in the day. I think it was called the Mongoose, and it had something special in there, which very quickly got
metal,
outlawed.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't allowed. That's what Segacic has got in his left foot. One of 5 hat-tricks scored in the EFL over the weekend. Josh Murphy, back, fit, shock horror, getting an assist for Segacic's second goal with a trademark ball across. I was reminding myself how good Josh Murphy was by watching all of his assists from the last 2 seasons. If you're the right winger playing on the team that Josh Murphy plays for,
get to that far post.
You score 10 goals a season just from Murphy's quality, which is quite nice. Sorba Thomas got the assist for Stoke's goal here, which I just wanted to mention that he has a double figures goals and assists this season, the only player in the Championship. The Sky Bet surprise this week, George, was PNE's 3-2 win at Sheffield United. That would have been sweet for Paul Heckingbottom.
Yeah, biggest price winner in the Championship. So therefore, this week's Sky Bet surprise, 4-1 it was that Preston would go to Bramall Lane and win. I did put up Sheffield United's Matt Ackerswerve in the betting show as
Nicely
well.
Done.
This was a game that, for neither team mattered more than basically bragging rights and who's going to finish above the other in the table. And unsurprisingly, maybe it kind of felt like that mattered more to Preston than it did for Sheffield United. And ever since Chris Wilder spoke about the need for his team to show the fight, they've lost 2 consecutive games. The first 2 goals both came from Liam Lindsay. They both came from headers. They both came from corners, one from either side. 2 decent headers to get them there. North End nearly went 3-0 up through Lewis Dobbin after the ball was squared to him by Daniel Jebison, but it was saved. Gustavo Harmer converted a penalty to make it 2-1 before Dobbin got his goal to make it 2-2. Patrick Bamford scored late on, and Sheffield United had a couple of good opportunities really late in the game to draw level, but were unable to do so. So this puts Preston in 12th position in the Championship this season. And I think Paul Heckingbottom, it's often the case that the managers over the course of a season who get the most credit are those that finish in the top 2 or in the top 6. But it's easy to forget, because of Preston North End's very strong start, that they were one of the favourites with the bookmakers to get relegated at the beginning of the season. They had overgone a huge squad overhaul, bringing in loads of young loan players, all of whom, or most of whom, have played incredibly well, including Dobbin, but also Alfie Devine and Jebison as well. And I think if Hecky can lead them to a top half finish, then that'll certainly be a really good job well done. So credit to him, credit to them. They host Southampton on final day, so may still have a part to play in the Championship this season, but they'll be desperate to get something out of that and finish in the top half, which I think would be a pretty good job well done.
Elsewhere, Birmingham beat Bristol City 2-1. Phil Neumann, strong end to his first season in a blue shirt, scores. I think plenty to be positive about with his improvement over the last couple of months, and Clara as well, who I think is one of the better centre-backs at the level 2. Osman made it 2-0, big error from Sam Morsey in the build-up to that one, and Horvat scored a pen for Bristol City. And Blues will finish the season between 9th and 11th, depending on what happens on the weekend. And yeah, I'll be certainly waiting with interest to see whether the board will back or sack Chris Davis. Bristol City, they'll finish between 11th or 16th. They're at home to Stoke on final day, which you'd expect them to win. So maybe closer to 11th than 16th. We'll see. Norwich City and Swansea City drew 1-1. You'll never guess who scored for Swansea, George.
Zan Vipotnik.
The Viper, 6 clear at the top of the goal scoring charts. He has scored 43% of Swansea's goals this season. I'm not actually sure I've ever seen anyone above 40% of a team's goals. The next highest in the Championship is 22%. A penalty apiece, the other scored by Kenny McLean, 1-1. Massive final day coming. Obviously a big one on Tuesday night as well. Looking forward to breaking it all down for you. Our final day recap will be coming out over the weekend. We're going to record on Saturday evening. So stay tuned for that. And then, of course, at the start of next week, straight into playoff preview stuff. So brilliant end to the Championship season. Thanks for joining us for these pods, and please do so again over the weekend and early next week. Cheers and go well.